unlocking human potential through lifelong learning opportunities. Let's review about SDG 4.
Let's talk about a promise, a huge promise written right into a nation's constitution that says every single child has a right to an education. Now, imagine that same country has the second highest number of kids out of school in the entire world. So what's going on? That's the story we're getting into right now.
Okay, so look at this right here. This is not some vague guideline or a hopeful mission statement. This is the real deal. Article 25A of Pakistan's constitution. It's a fundamental, legally binding right, and the wording is ironclad. It doesn't say the state should or might provide education. It says the state shall provide. That's a guarantee.
Which, of course, leads us to the huge, glaring question at the center of all this. If the promise is that clear, that legally solid, then why is the reality on the ground so dramatically different? How is it even possible to have this constitutional right and at the same time have one of the worst education crises on the planet? That's the puzzle we're going to unpack.
All right, so before we dig deeper into Pakistan's specific situation, we need to zoom out for just a second, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. It's actually part of a much bigger global commitment that nearly every country, including Pakistan, has signed up for. And that commitment is called Sustainable Development Goal 4, or SDG 4 for short. Now, the words here are really important. The goal isn't just about cramming kids into schools. It specifies inclusive, equitable, and crucially, quality education. That word, quality, is key. This is the world's shared blueprint. And wow, when you look at what SDG 4 is actually trying to do, it's huge. We're talking about the entire journey, from early childhood care all the way up to university and job training. It's about getting enough qualified teachers, making sure there's no gender gap, and supporting the most vulnerable. It's the whole shebang.
Okay, so that's the global ideal. Now let's crash back down to reality in Pakistan. We're zooming back in from that big world promise to one nation struggle, and, well, calling it a struggle is putting it very mildly.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. In May of 2024, the government of Pakistan itself did something pretty dramatic. It officially declared a national education emergency. I mean, just think about that for a second. That's the government holding its hands up and saying, we have a massive crisis on our hands.
So, an education emergency. What does that actually look like for people? Let's break down who is being left behind, because it's really a crisis of two things. Access, which is just getting into a school in the first place, and quality, which is what you learn if you're lucky enough to even be there.
Just take a moment and try to wrap your head around this number. 26 million. That's the estimated number of kids in Pakistan who are not in school. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire population of Australia. It's a staggering figure, the second highest on the entire planet.
But you know, the problem actually runs deeper. Because even for the kids who do manage to get into a classroom, there's another crisis. It's called learning poverty. And it's a really simple but kind of heartbreaking measurement. Can a 10-year-old read and understand a simple story? In Pakistan, a huge percentage can't. So they are physically in a school, but they're not learning the absolute basics.
So who is being affected the most? Well, it probably won't surprise you that it often comes down to money. The gap in education between rich and poor families is just a massive chasm. If you're born into a poorer household, your chances of being out of school are dramatically higher. Poverty is a huge barrier.
And within that crisis, there's another clear dividing line: gender. Girls are hit the hardest, making up the majority of these out-of-school kids. They face all these unique and extra hurdles, right? Things from cultural pressures to just the simple dangerous lack of safe and private bathrooms at schools.
Okay, so the situation looks pretty bleak, but you'd think, surely, there are plans in place to fix this, right? And you'd be correct. On paper, Pakistan has a whole toolkit of policies that look like they're designed to solve this exact problem. So let's see what those are.
And where does it all start? Right back where we began, with Article 25A. This is the foundation for everything. The legal right to a free education is right there in the Constitution. You really can't ask for a stronger starting point than that.
So, the government has this really clever program to get poor kids into school. It's called the Benazir Talimi Wazife Program. Here's the deal. If a family enrolls their kid, and that kid actually shows up at least 70% of the time, the family gets a small cash payment. And get this, the payment is even higher if the child is a girl. So it's fighting poverty and the gender gap at the exact same time. Pretty smart.
And the plans don't just stop at school. They're looking at the whole pipeline. You've got institutions for technical training to give kids actual job skills, and the Higher Education Commission, which is focused on making universities better. So when you look at it on paper, it seems like they've thought of everything.
So let's just quickly recap. We've got a constitutional right, we have smart-sounding programs, we have national institutions. So what gives? Why is there still an emergency? Well, this is where we get to the absolute heart of the problem, the missing ingredient.
Because it turns out that all these great ideas, all these well-intentioned policies are being choked off at the root. All the sources point to one single overwhelming factor that is undermining absolutely everything else.
And here it is. This chart says it all. See that tiny little bar on the left? That's the percentage of its entire economy that Pakistan spends on education. It's less than 1%. Now look at the bar on the right. That's the 4% that international bodies say is the bare minimum you need to run a functional education system. That staggering gap, that right there explains almost everything.
And that brings us right back to where we started. We saw the powerful promise written in law. We've seen the smart policies designed to make it a reality. But we've ended with a budget that makes achieving any of it basically impossible. And it forces you to ask a really tough question. When a country has the right laws but not the right budget, what is that promise really worth?
Thanks for your time to learn, earn, and lead. This is Mohammad Zishan Awan, Advocate High Court. To join Vision 2047, please register with us and be part of the transformation.